Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. Oh, we've got some major updates in the Brian Kohberger case out in Idaho and his upcoming trial, which is still set for this August. I mean, at one point it seemed so far away, didn't it? And now we're coming up on it. Information about this case had been coming out at a snail's pace. Oh my God, until now. I've been following the case and talking with Howard Blum, you guys know him by this point, my team about it, and even I am just blown away by what just got released. In the last week, we learned more about how Kohberger may have obtained the knife prosecutors allege he used in the heinous act of killing 4 innocent college students in Moscow, Idaho. It happened in November 2022. It happened within a 12 to 17 minute period at 4 a.m. He was a teaching assistant and PhD student at the nearby Washington State and Washington University, and they were all students at Idaho. And he is alleged to have come to their home in the middle of the night, killed the 2 best friends, Madison Mogen and Kaylee Gonsalves, who were sleeping in a bed together, as female best friends often do, as well as Xana Kernodle and her boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, who were in a different room on the second floor. The 2 girls on the third, Xana and Ethan on the second. And there were 2 other roommates in the house. Okay, 2 other roommates in the house. And we are learning so much more about them and what they did or did not do. I don't even know how to process it. All this as the prosecution releases a new photo of Brian Kohberger hours after the quadruple murders. And it is the most chilling thing I have seen in years. I can't stop looking at it. We also now finally have the 911 call that was made from this house on 1122 King Street. That's the murder house, which for all this time they've been withholding from us. Why? We didn't understand. There's a lot in there. And nobody has been following this case closer than Howard Blum. He's a journalist. He's the New York Times bestselling author of the book, When the Night Comes Falling, a requiem for the Idaho student murders. And he's my guest today. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. 4 years of crushing interest rates, runaway inflation, and reckless government spending, and who is paying the price? You are. You might have bills stacking up, debt collectors on your back. You might barely be able to keep food on the table. Done with Debt can be a way out. They have developed new aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently without bankruptcy or loans. Done with Debt stands between you and your bill collectors. They can go head-to-head with creditors, getting balances reduced, interest rates slashed, and penalties stopped. They create a plan to end your debt fast and put more cash in your wallet every month. And right now, Done with Debt is accepting new clients, but you have to act fast. Some credit relief programs expire. Before you make another payment, consider a visit to donewithdebt.com or just call 1-888-322-1054 right now. Speak with one of their debt relief strategists for free. Go to donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com. Howard, welcome back.
Nice to speak with you.
All right, let's kick it off with the 911 call. It is 4 minutes. We are going to listen to the whole thing. Play it.
911 location of your emergency.
Hi, something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
What is the rest of the address?
Oh, Kings Road.
Okay. And is that a house or an apartment?
It's a house.
Can you repeat the address to make sure that I have it right?
I'll talk to you guys. We live at the White, so we're next to them.
I need someone to repeat the address for verification.
The address, 1122 King Road.
And what's the phone number that you're calling from?
What's your phone number?
And tell me exactly what's going on.
One of the roommates has passed out, and she was drunk last night and she's not waking up.
Okay.
Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah. Hi, this is.
And are you with the patient? Okay, I need someone to keep the phone, stop passing it around.
Can I just tell you what happened pretty much?
What is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now?
I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m.
Okay, I need to know what's going on right now if someone is passed out. Can you find that out?
Yeah, I'll come. Come on, Bethany, we gotta go check. But we have to. Is she passed out? She's not waking up.
Okay, one moment. I'm getting help started that way.
Okay, thank you. What's wrong?
Okay, and how old is she?
She's 20.
20, you said?
Yes, 20. Here's one.
Okay.
Hello? Hello?
Okay, I need someone to stop passing the phone around because I've talked to 4 different people.
Okay, sorry, they just gave me the phone.
Is she breathing?
Hello?
Is she breathing?
No.
Okay.
Dude, talk to them, okay? I can't talk to them. I need you to talk to them.
Hello.
Okay. I've already sent the ambulance and law enforcement. Stay on the line. If there is a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
Say that again. There's a police here right now.
Okay. If there's a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
We don't have one. I think yes. Do you have a defibrillator? Yes, we have one.
Are you talking to the officer?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to let you go since he's there with you and can help you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Wow. Incredibly disturbing. Just so the audience understands that the murders happened at 4 a.m. That call did not get placed until almost noon the next morning, 11:55 a.m. And for all this time, they have not released the 911 call. It wasn't until this week we finally got to hear it. We believe, not totally confirmed, but we believe that the girl who made the call initially was Bethany Funk, one of the 2 roommates who survived. The other roommate is named Dylan Mortensen. She's the one who saw an intruder, which they were trying to tell the 911 operator, who wasn't in the mood to talk about what happened the night before. But those are the 2 surviving roommates. So we believe that's Bethany Funk, who could barely get sentences out. And Howard, the remarkable thing, of course, is that they're talking about their roommate having been drunk and she isn't waking up. And just the one roommate, they're not, I am assuming that they had found Xana Kernodle, who was on the 2nd floor with her boyfriend, Ethan, because they are not saying 4, they only had 3 of the female roommates, but they're not saying 4 of our friends are dead. They're saying one girl's passed out and she was drunk last night. We think she's dead.
Right. It seems that they did not even go up to the 3rd floor. What's so, horrific, you just listen to that hyperventilation. It's so poignant what they went through. And the idea, first of all, that they did not make the call, as you pointed out, until about 8 hours after the crimes took place. And it's just been released that they were up that morning, one of the girls at 7:30, another at about 8:20, and they were making other calls and texts. And they still wait until 11:50 or so to call the police. And that's sort of hard to understand. And yet, these children, and they are children, were overwhelmed by this. And part of their reluctance, why they might not have called the police, and the fact that they were drunk, they didn't want to face the reality. We all hate to face impossible things, but you can see from the dispatcher how the kids, the students in this college town felt the adults react to them. We saw that on the police videos earlier when they come to the house on the noise disturbances calls, how the cops go out of their way to dump their beer on the sidewalk. There's a real antagonism between the students and the town, and that adds, I think, to their reluctance to have reached out for help. But also,
yeah. Well, I was just going to say, it's very eerie. So that she calls and says something is happening, and they say one of the roommates is passed out. And they're clearly referring to Xana Kernodle, because when she says, how old is she? She says she's 20. And both Kaylee and Maddie were 21. And when you're that age, you know exactly the number of years you are. You know what I mean? Like your age means a lot to you, especially when you're 20 versus 21. College roommates would absolutely have all the other ages in their heads of their roommates. So she's saying she's 20. So she clearly found Xana. But where was Ethan? Because our understanding was, if memory serves, I didn't go back and look this up, that he was found closer to the doorway of the bedroom that he was in with Xana. They don't mention him.
I don't think she's found Xana yet. What I think, and the way I reconstruct it, is that the door was closed and they were knocking, because when they go up, I think it's Hunter Johnson, one of the friends, goes up and knocks on the door.
And he's on that phone call.
Right, and he's calling their names. He goes, Xana, Ethan. And then, to his credit, I mean, the young man's a hero. He says, get out, get out. He insists that they run away. He doesn't want them to confront what's in there. And I'm not sure they actually even get a glimpse into the room. He shoos them away. I don't think they ever really saw the bodies. They just couldn't get a response. And that's what was scaring them. They were afraid to go into the room. They knew what they would find. But they couldn't quite face this unthinkable reality. And so they kept outside. And Hunter was the one who went in, and he behaved, like a knight in shining armor in a difficult situation.
That makes more sense. Because they're not saying there's blood everywhere. You know, you and I have talked about how there was so much blood, it seeped through the walls of the house. They're not saying that. They're like, we're not sure. She was drunk last night. She maybe passed out. So clearly, but call 911. And so they clearly thought something was wrong. Maybe it was that she wasn't responding to texts and she wasn't. I don't know why they're not talking about Kaylee and Maddie. Kaylee, I think, wasn't even supposed to be there that night. She'd stayed over. She had moved out, but she was back visiting Maddie. Yeah. But they're not mentioning Maddie. Nobody seems to be aware that there also might be an issue on the third floor. All of it is just so strange. And then we have to talk about the thing you just mentioned, which is the text messages that morning. But first, make your point. Go ahead.
They had intimations that something was wrong, because you can see after the night before, the morning before, at 4 a.m. approximately, when she confronts Kohberger, and then this is Dylan, and then she goes back into her room. The two surviving roommates are texting back and forth, and they'd say, I'm freaked
just
out.
Learned this.
Yes, I don't know what's happening. And finally, Bethany, who's in the first floor room, tells her, run, come down here. And it's almost like a prayer. She wants her to get there safely. And they stay there together until about 7:30 the next morning when they wake up. And again, they start texting and calling people. But they don't get to the police. They're afraid to get to the next level. They don't want to go into that room themselves, and they don't want to call the police. It's all too impossible to deal with. And it's a tragedy, I think, that the tape wasn't released earlier, because for the past 2.5 years, these two young women, the surviving roommates, have been slandered, libeled. Their characters have been impugned if they somehow were involved in some sort of cover-up. And you can just listen to this tape, and you can see that they were not involved in the events, but they are victims too.
Unbelievable. So you've got, now we know, this is all new. You've got the two surviving witnesses, because all along we knew that Dylan had seen the perpetrator, had seen an intruder that night wearing a COVID-type mask with bushy eyebrows, around 6 feet tall, in the house at 4 a.m., in the 4 a.m. hour. And that they she saw him. It was unclear whether he saw her, but she froze. He left. She went back into her room, and we knew that they didn't call 911 until noon the next day. So 8 hours passed before she calls 911. And it's been one of the big mysteries in this case. Why didn't she call 911? She saw an intruder in the house in the middle of the night. And we know from the police affidavit, she said she was in a frozen shock phase, and that's why she didn't call. But that just seemed very strange that it would take you 8 hours, like you eventually would call. But then they were saying, well, it was a neighbor that came in and called. And you mentioned Hunter. Yes, he did come in and call. But we understand that was Bethany, and we think Dylan was also involved. So these two roommates, now we know, were texting, were scared, were in the one ran to the other one's room. They were in there hiding. And it appears that they may have gotten a hold of Hunter to come over to help check things out. But we still don't really understand the delay. Why that didn't happen earlier than noon.
The delay is irrational. It makes no sense, but this was an irrational moment. They were going through an experience that was overwhelming them. They couldn't process it, and they didn't want to process it. They refused to confront the logic of what was happening. Just as when Dylan sees the assailant in the house, she can't speak out. That's what I believe saves her life. If she had spoken up, I think she would have been a victim too. But because she's too overwhelmed, she retreats into her silence and goes into her room. The intruder leaves the house and she survives. But, this is really a story about people who are overwhelmed by events and don't want to face what is happening because it's too large. I write in my book, coincidentally, about how Kohberger's father, as he's going across country with his son, as they're leaving for Christmas break, he too is getting intimations that something is wrong, but he can't quite go all the way. He can't make this realization that his son is a monster. And in the same way, these two young women can't somehow cross this Rubicon of what has really happened in their house, what has really happened to their friends.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to read for the audience what we have now on the text messages between the two surviving roommates, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, from 4:22 to 4:24 a.m. And we know that the murders happened between 4 a.m. and 4:17 a.m. So this is right after. Clearly, it appears Dylan started texting Bethany right after she saw the intruder. So DM to BF. No one is answering. We're not sure what preceded this. This is what we have. DM to BF. I'm really confused right now. DM to Kaylee Gonsalves, who we now know is upstairs deceased. Kaylee, DM to Gonsalves again. What's going on? Then Bethany texts to DM. Yeah, dude, WTF. Then Bethany to Dylan. Xana was wearing all black. I don't understand why she would say that. Then Dylan to Bethany. I'm freaking out right now. Then Dylan to Bethany. No, it's like a ski mask almost, she says. Bethany to Dylan. STFU. Shut the F up. Bethany to DM. Actually, DM to BF. Like he had something over his forehead and little mouth. This is changing. I mean, really, this sounds like, she says ski mask. What she later told the cops was like a COVID mask. Here's Dylan back to Bethany. I'm not kidding. I'm so freaked out. Bethany to Dylan. So am I. Dylan to Bethany. My phone is going to die. Bethany to Dylan. Come to my room. Run down here. And then we understand that's what she did. So they go together into the same room. But then we have to talk about the texts the next morning, because what we see is that, at 7:30 the next morning, Bethany called her father. At 7:30 in the morning, she called her father, Howard. I don't get how we get past 8 a.m. before a police officer or other adult showed up at that house.
They don't want to face it. When you talked about when they say Xana is in black, they're trying to find a rational explanation of this figure that they see in black in the house. They can say, well, maybe that wasn't a man you saw. Maybe that was Xana who you saw. And you shouldn't have to worry about it. Again, this is just just too large. The moment is too large for these people to process. They're overwhelmed by it, and I don't think they'll ever
There's more. There's more.
it.
So Bethany called her father at 7:30 the next morning. She also made several other phone calls before the 911 call and also took photos between 8:41 and 8:42. I have no idea what that means. Here, take that down because it's going to confuse people. Took photos between 8:41 and 8:42. At 8:05, Dylan, switching over from Bethany to Dylan now, began using Instagram. Between 8:05 and 11:57 a.m., Dylan's cell phone accessed Instagram, Snapchat, Yik Yak, and TikTok, according to a filing from the defense. Now, that could be Dylan trying to see whether Xana or anyone else has been on and posted to those apps. I mean, that could absolutely be one girl, because they were very prolific social media posters trying to see, like, is they're not responding to her texts.
I would believe they were just looking for diversions. What would be most interesting, and I think the defense will want to get a hold of, is what did the one girl say to her father when she called at 7:30 in the morning? What was the substance of that conversation? Did they talk about the instance? And why didn't the father then call 911 if she had discussed the matter with him? Why did it was 7:30 in the morning? That to me is the more inexplicable question that still needs to be answered. And
it
what
makes
also is interesting,
no sense.
All these questions that you're raising, this is just what the defense is going to do. Because there's no logical explanation for them, and they're going to try to raise as much doubt as possible with the jury. And that's what this trial is all going to be about, trying to find reasons to raise doubt from things that seem, on one level, odd, but a way events really unfolded in real life.
Well, one of them, I'm not sure which of the roommates, but one of them called their father at 11:39 a.m. So again, either again if it was the one gal who'd already called her father, or for the first time. And so that was 11:39, and then it was 11:55 that they called the 911 operator. So it seems like perhaps, okay, so it was Bethany who called her father at 7:30. And again, we believe it was Bethany who called 911 eventually. And then at 11:39, there was another call to a father. By 11:55, they were calling 911. So perhaps in that last call to the father, he was like, call 911. And we know that
actually,
as of
I think he said, call your friends. Get your friends down here. That's what, when the father, that's what brought the kids from the fraternity down there to look. And that's when they had more people there, they felt protected in a way, and then they called the police.
All right, now we'll get on to what the defense is revealing and what we're learning about Kohberger in a minute, which is even more fascinating than this, if that's possible. But I just want to spend 1 minute first on these 911 calls and what's going on with the roommates, because Steve Gonsalves, who's Kaylee's father, has reacted. He went on News Nation on Friday to that call, listening to the 4-minute call that we all just did. Here is SOT 51.
I always wanted it to make more sense. Like any murder, your brain wants to gravitate towards how make this make sense, make this make sense. But the truth is, murder never makes sense. This is a psychopathic person who does something that breaks the norm of all of our consciousness. All of our minds are just struggling with the fact that this has happened. So we can logically try to make it make sense, but it's not really going to make sense. It's not Hollywood, where they try to make it all fit together. In real life, you're just sitting there dumbfounded, like, why can somebody be killed in their bedroom?
He also spoke to Hunter Johnson. You're describing him as behaving heroically, who went over there and actually did apparently open up the door and see his best friend Ethan Chapin dead, along with his friend Xana Kernodle. Steve Gonsalves spoke to that as well on News Nation on Friday. Take a listen.
I talked to Hunter directly, and it sucks. He had a broken soul. This is a man who's seen his best friend dead, like dying, like gone. So we exchanged a moment, and I talked to him, and he was trying to protect everyone in that house to not go through what was overwhelming him at the moment. So I don't know about the details of upstairs, downstairs, door open, door not, but in the bigger picture, does it really matter? He was literally just responding to what he probably thought was a prank, thinking his friend, his best buddy, had these girls rolling, and he showed up there, and he seen the opposite of our prank, and I seen it in his eyes. He was broken. He was very broken from what he had seen.
That's awful. But Howard, he raises a good point in that here we are with the benefit of 2020 hindsight, knowing what happened in that house that night. Those girls did not know. And your mind would not go to a murderer came in here and killed everyone. They probably would go to, I sensed danger and I saw someone strange. But, our instincts are generally like, don't get everybody spun up for nothing. Like, calm down, right? Like, it's probably a prank.
And yet they're also realizing in one part of their mind that something is very wrong, and they just don't want to go there yet. They don't want to give into that. As if you don't want to get the doctor's diagnosis of some horrible illness. And Mr. Gonsalves talks about, there's no understanding of what happened. That's going to be the defense's whole case. There's no motive. And you're never going to get really a motive for this entire case that makes sense. Maybe you'll hear a story in the court, but how can you rationally explain anyone killing 4 young people in cold blood? There is no reason that makes sense for any reasonable thinking person.
Okay, now let's talk about Kohberger, because the stuff on him is just chilling. Incredibly, we have now seen a photo, that's been released of Brian Kohberger. They say this was taken from his own phone, all right? They've revealed now that the state intends to introduce a photograph of Brian Kohberger. It's a selfie that he took from his own phone the night of the murders, the morning after. Oh my God, look at it. The murders took place between 4 and 4:17 a.m. In the early morning hours of November 13th. This is from 11:30 a.m. This would have been 6 hours after he allegedly committed quadruple murder, which he denies. He looks bloodless. He looks like a vampire with no color whatsoever in his face. He looks gaunt, and he is giving the thumbs up sign. What in the hell is this, Howard?
What the defense is going to say, you look at him, he might look gaunt, he might look like a vampire, but you don't see any blood, and you don't see any blood in his bathtub behind him, and you don't see any blood on the shower curtain. They're going to say, if he is the murderer, where was the blood? And the prosecution at the same time introduced that photo to show his bushy eyebrows that Dylan Mortensen, when she made the identification of the intruder.
Let's put it back up there. I hadn't been looking at it for that purpose, but yes, it does show some bushy eyebrows. Keep going.
And that's what they're going to say. But also look at his knuckles. Do they seem sort of red? I don't know. I was trying to look at it closely, but other than him is looking like a really weird countenance, but there's no crime to be weird. You don't see any blood. You don't see any scratches on him. And again, that bathroom curtain in the background. When the police go to his apartment, when they have the search warrant after his arrest, there's no bathroom curtain there. They make a point of that. So clearly, if this was his bathroom...
It's got Psycho vibes. It's definitely got Psycho vibes from the movie Psycho. In the shower, right?
Yeah.
You're
right, yes.
The guy committed a murder with a knife. Like, he's wearing all white. It's buttoned up to the top. It almost feels like a murderer trolling us. And we know from the police affidavit, Howard, that this would have been taken about an hour after he went back to, if the cops' theory of the case is right, based on police data and cell phone data, he went back to the site of the murders around 9:30 in the morning. And apparently checked on the scene. And we know now, of course, nothing was happening at the scene at that time. Inside, the girls may have been texting, but the police had not yet been alerted. And look at him. Then he appears to have gone back home, gone into his bathroom, and taken this bizarre selfie.
It's extremely disturbing and disquieting. At the same time, both the defense and the prosecution are going to be able to use that photograph for their own purposes. Again, the defense will make the case, no blood, no scratches, nothing to hide, no crime to be weird. And the prosecution is going to say, look at the bushy eyebrows, and they might even try to raise the question of the thumbs up. What's he giving a thumbs up for?
Mm-hmm. So that, I can't stop looking at it. This is just so deeply disturbing. But that's not the worst thing that's happened to Brian Kohberger over the past couple of years as the case against him has been developed. This may be. I mean, you and I have talked many times about what we think of the evidence, and I think we both think one of, if not, well, they're two most problematic things. The DNA on the knife sheath, which has been affirmatively linked to it is Brian Kohberger's, and also the fact that when they arrested him at his parents' home in the Poconos a few weeks later, he was stuffing his trash into little Ziploc baggies with the intention of disposing it, we believe, into the neighbor's trash, which is what he'd been doing, according to the cops, over the past few nights. So those are bad, bad, bad facts for him. But so is the latest data on the K-bar knife. They've never found the murder weapon. They found the knife sheath in the bed with the two girls, Kaylee and Maddie. And it had touch DNA on the knife snap, the snap of the sheath, which they then linked, thanks to genetic genealogy trees, back to the father of Brian Kohberger, which is then what got them to Brian Kohberger, who was only 10 miles away. And then once they got him in custody, they did an affirmative DNA test of his cheek swab, and that was 100% plus whatever the numbers are. They're astronomically in the favor of it being him and his DNA on that knife sheath snap. But now they are revealing that they may not have found the murder weapon, Howard, but they certainly found some incriminating things on Brian Kohberger's Amazon.
Yes. I mean, Brian Kohberger bought a knife just like the one that was used or left behind at the murder scene with the knife sheath with the Marine insignia, a K-bar knife, in March, before he even came out to Washington State University. That would suggest that when he drove across country that summer with his father, he had the knife and a sharpening tool he'd also bought, packed up in his belongings, taking out to Washington State for whatever reason. And he wasn't a hunter. There's no evidence that he ever went hunting. What also has been revealed is that after the murders, and the knife has now disappeared, his Amazon account, or the account that's shared by Kohberger and his family members, he was clicking on other knives as if to purchase them again. The defense is going to say that the Amazon algorithm just sends you there. If you bought a knife in the past, they'll send you there again. But buried in the prosecution's filings is they're saying that they're going to have a witness. They mentioned that just yesterday, who's going to testify to him having possession of a K-bar knife. Will this be a family member? I found that sort of interesting. Could a family member be going to the stand to testify against Brian?
Wow. I mean, they would feel an obligation, I think, to do it. I just feel like the whole country has, been interested in this case. These family members, the sister in particular, I think there are two sisters, I just feel like they'd have to do what's right if they knew it, but we'll find out. The thing about Amazon is just so fascinating. So what we're saying is, they had not been made public until now.
One of the sisters I just found out, is writing a book, which is sort of interesting.
What?
Yes.
Oh my God. Oh, well, she's welcome to come on the Megyn Kelly Show to promote it, because I'd love to ask her some questions.
She can't publish until the gag order is lifted, but she's writing away from what I hear. I've been told from reliable sources.
Well, so it's very interesting that he would have potentially gone back on Amazon searching for another K-bar knife and knife sheath. You could go many directions with that. Like, he lost the knife sheath and didn't have the knife anymore because he disposed of it. It was the murder weapon. And therefore, in case the police ever came knocking, he wanted to have that knife that they would see in his Amazon history he purchased back in March before he got there, still sitting in his room without any traces of blood on it. See, I'm a good little boy. I still have my knife, and it's not anybody's murder weapon. Or you could make the case he had more murders in store that he considered.
That's the chilling hypothesis that the prosecution, I think, is going to try to make. And that's how they're going to justify any shortcuts that were taken in this case. We had to move quickly. Here we had a murderer they're going to claim, allege, who was ready to kill again.
What was do you remember the time frame off the top of your head where he started to search for a new Amazon, on Amazon for a new K-bar knife?
It's days after the murders, within 24 hours or so.
Oh my God, that's chilling.
Interesting too, you mentioned the IgG, the genetics genealogy, how that was a key part of the case before. Well, the defense, Kohberger's defense is now sort of would concede that was Brian Kohberger's DNA on the knife sheath. The real question now, and what's going to be the focus of this trial, is how did the knife sheath get there? The defense is going to claim that Brian Kohberger was never in the house. He didn't put it there. The real perpetrators put that knife sheath there, and somehow they had gotten Kohberger's DNA on it.
That is such a stretch. I mean, what I'm gleaning from what's getting released now is the defense knows it's, I don't want to say it has lost, but it's got an enormous uphill battle. And you tell me, because you've been following it so closely, it appears to me they're now just doing what they can to mitigate the expected bad result as opposed to truly try to get it not guilty, which I'm sure they'd love, but I think they're getting realistic.
I think in the back of the defense's mind, and this is what I'm hearing, is they're trying to avoid the death penalty. Just last week, I think it was March 12th or so, Brad Little, the governor of Idaho, signed a law that makes the firing squad the primary form of execution in the state. That's what happens. You get convicted in a death penalty case, you go before the firing squad. That's your sentence. And Kohberger's team is now trying to do whatever they can to avoid it. Key to that defense is they've raised that Kohberger is on the autistic spectrum. And they're saying that he has an inability to concentrate, to focus. His presence in the courtroom will disturb people, and they're saying that will be prejudice jurors, and therefore the death penalty should be taken off the table because of that. I believe, and this is just my theory, my hypothesis, is that they don't think that will fly, but they're hoping down the road that if Kohberger still wants this case to go to trial, that they're going to be able to say, because of his autistic spectrum profile, that he can't make his own decisions, that they have to make the decisions for him, and that they want to enter into a plea deal. Will the prosecution go along with that? Well, that's what we'll see. That's going to be, I think, the big drama of this trial.
So you think they're now, because now they're saying he's on the autism spectrum, that he has obsessive compulsive disorder, and that he has something called developmental coordination disorder. And so is the purpose of saying all that to set up, I mean, I don't know how you'd use that to plead insanity. That's a long leap to go from that stuff to insanity. Or is the purpose of that just to be like a mitigating factor to avoid death penalty?
Well, it was done to avoid the death penalty, but also buried into that motion is they talk in great detail, which I sort of found surprising, about Kohberger's inability to process information and this is a PhD graduate candidate, and also to work with them to give them the information that they need. They say they're hampered by Kohberger. So I think they're going to claim that he's unable to be in charge of his own defense, that he can't make the right decisions, and therefore they want to take over the case completely and make the decisions, and they want, without his permission, to go forward to the state and try to make a plea deal.
Do you think there's any chance he's saying something behind the scenes like, I will testify, and they're getting ready to use these things to say, Your Honor, you can't let him do this. It's definitely against his interests, and we need to be able to overrule him in this fundamental right he has?
Well, the state wants him to testify. They want him, he's given this alibi that he was out, looking at the stars at 4 a.m. on a freezing, cloudy night when the murders took place in a rural park. And the state is saying, well, since there are no witnesses, we want Kohberger to get on the stand and say that he was there. And so far, the defense is saying, not so fast. We're going to bring up cell phone people who can maybe put him somewhere else or raise questions. But I think he will want to testify. I think, and that's also part of, that will say his autistic spectrum behavior, and they will try to take the decision-making process out of Kohberger's hands, and maybe even his family's hands too.
And maybe getting all this, if they can get all these disorders, alleged disorders, into the record without him testifying, it mitigates some of the other things that you and I have talked about that may come in, like his increasingly dissembling behavior in the classroom at Washington State, the antagonism of his professors, and the weird potential stalking of one of his female students, and, volunteering to help put her security cameras in and not being able to take a hint. Like, they may be trying to, none of this stuff explains that. Everybody listening to this knows somebody who's on the autism spectrum who doesn't do any of that stuff. You can be totally normal and be on the autism spectrum. You might just be like a little socially awkward. None of that, never mind OCD, which is not like, and I don't know what developmental coordination disorder is, but it certainly doesn't seem like it would explain any of that stuff. But there's a lot of very bizarre Kohberger behavior to explain.
Yes, but I think, you can be bizarre and you can be weird and still be a killer. And they're realizing the state is trying to throw everything they can. They're trying to now also claim that they didn't get the discovery information in a logical form. That the
state's claiming that, or the defense is claiming that?
The defense is claiming that. I apologize. That they describe it as if a snow globe was turned upside down. That's how all the files were given to them. That was sort of the image they use.
That's fine. There's no, it's okay.
We have 4 months before the trial. That's what you have to do. You have the 3-man team and assistants. You have to go through all this stuff. I don't think it's going to work. They realize they're getting put into a corner. If they don't make a plea deal, what their case is going to come down to is they're going to say that they were other perpetrators that the defense and the government should have, that the prosecution should have looked into, and they avoided them. And they say they avoided them at their own peril. That's their word. They're almost threatening them. They said, because you didn't do your job, we're going to go into the courtroom and we're going to expose how you didn't do a good job. And that might be more pressure for them trying to get a settlement to avoid what they're going to claim is a slipshod job in making this case by the prosecution and the investigators. But that's, they will go back time and time. What we're going to hear about, I think, this summer is the question we repeated by Ann Taylor: how did this knife sheath get in that room? Who put it there? And that's what they're going to try to get the jury thinking about, that it was someone other than their client, Brian Kohberger.
The evidence of where his car was on the night in question is starting to shore up as well. We saw the judge in the case, Judge Hippler, which again is just you really got to hit the P when you say that. It's Hippler. I don't understand why people keep these names that are so controversial or weird. Like, I don't get it. I would change my name.
It was Judge better than Judge, the first judge in the case.
That's right. I guess we can forgive defense attorney Ann Taylor. She didn't, when she was a kid, her parents might not have known what was going to happen there. Anyway, Hippler just denied Kohberger's request to bring in defense experts who he wanted to offer testimony against both the Amazon shopping trip, who, as you point out, I guess they were going to have their experts say, oh no, it was just like when you order a vitamin and they assume your vitamin has run out and they send you a tickler, like, here are your vitamins, like, here's another knife just in case you were planning on killing anything else. That's one. But also they wanted to bring in an expert to talk about his movements on the night in question. And Hippler said no. Hippler said you can have that done by video streaming during the hearing, and or he said if we need to hear directly from the witnesses, we can potentially have an affidavit or a written declaration. But when you, having looked at like the record of the car where it's been, I mean, I'm looking at the map, and what it's basically going to show is he drove directly to their houses. Like, it's showing pretty much a straight line once he got near the house of going right to their houses. What did you make of the new evidence on where his car was?
Well, first part about what's so interesting about the cell phone and triangulation expert that the defense wanted to use. He's been used in other cases, and his whole testimony has been impugned. They really had a search to find one guy who would testify, and they brought in a very problematic expert who's not quite an expert. A Colorado judge threw his testimony out of the court in a previous case. So
this is the defense's expert?
Yes, and that's interesting. I think that's why Hippler was saying we don't need this. As for the car, they're going to keep on hammering away. You have no picture of a license plate, and you have no picture of anyone over the steering wheel. There's no clear photograph, and that's they're going to make that case. And they're also going to say it took the FBI 3 different times before they correctly identified the car within a certain number of years. And they're going to say the FBI couldn't make up their mind. There's no license plate photo, and there's no picture of a driver. So all this other stuff is irrelevant. They're going to try desperately, but there's just so much evidence against Kohberger that I think the prosecution has a very, very strong case.
So what now? Here we are, 5 months out from trial. What are the odds this does go to trial, Howard? Or do you think it actually has a chance of pleading out to, I can't imagine the prosecution with a case like this would take anything other than a murder one confession and possibly spare him the death penalty. But what are the odds?
I think the defense will try to get a plea deal. I don't believe in Idaho that the Idaho officials will allow this case to be settled. This case is at the heart and soul of Idaho. It's been horrific for the whole state. They can try to tear down, which the state did, the university did, the murder house, and make things go away. This is never going to go away. You've heard that cell phone call. You've heard those students. This is part of their life. They want this case to end in a punishment. And I think it will end with a conviction. And I think Kohberger, my belief is, he'll have to be sentenced to face a firing squad.
I believe he did it, and I would have no problem if a jury finds him guilty of seeing that happen. I don't know, the firing squad, you hate to think about it, but would it really be so bad to be in? I feel like a firing squad in some ways may be more humane than the electric chair. What's the debate about that?
Here's an argument that proves that in Idaho that it's more humane. Last October, they had a convict and they were going to use a lethal injection. They wheeled him into what is called the execution chamber. They strap him down. They try to give him the lethal injection. They give him 8 lethal injections over a course of 2.5 hours, and none of them work.
Was he like a cat?
Yes. For some reason, the people doing these lethal injections were prison guards rather than medical people, and they just couldn't do it. And he has to be wheeled out. And then his lawyers try to make the case, well, this is cruel and inhumane punishment to bring him again. And the governor, Brad Little, who just passed this firing squad law, said, not on your life, bring him back again.
What do you know how they do the firing squad? I think we talked about this once before. Did you say they have multiple shooters, so you don't know if you're the one who fired the fatal shot?
They haven't worked out all the details. All they've done so far, they originally made a $750,000 was put aside to build this sort of firing squad execution chamber. They've now said, for reasons that haven't been explained, they now need $1 million for this execution chamber. So they, in this $1 million room, they're still debating whether or not these will be robo guns, or will they be people with bullets? Will they be behind a wall? Nothing has been determined yet.
Wow, God, when you really start, it's just like whenever I start to hear about the death penalty, I hear about the crime, and I think, I'm fine with it, do it, I'll pull the trigger myself. And then when you start to talk about the actual details of the state taking someone's life, even someone as disgusting as this, I start to get uncomfortable with it. And I think about my Catholic faith. It's just one of those issues. I don't know. I still, net, I'm in favor of the death penalty. Howard, I am in favor of you very much for all the great work you've been doing on this case and keeping us up to date like nobody else. Thank you.
Pleasure talking with you again.
Wow. What are your thoughts? You guys always write the best thoughts on this case, and I do read them. So send me an email, Megyn@megynkelly.com. And by the way, it being Friday, check out megynkelly.com and go there if you want two things. Number one, if you want to sign up for our American News Minute, you give me your email, and we don't sell your emails or anything like that. I read them. And that will make sure that you get our once a week email with all like the highlights of the show and all the news that you need to know from the previous week in 60 seconds or less. Is a very good thing to have in the era of Trump. But also, it's a chance to get your email registered just with us, again, not to be sold, just in case anything ever happens to the show, so we can let you know, just in case YouTube decides they're not big fans and we get pulled. We would love to have a way of reaching our audience. Again, if you are one of our email subscribers, we've never bothered you, we never would. It's just for that. So anyway, check it out. Go to megynkelly.com and sign up, and we will send you our email today, and you can hear all our latest antics with our very naughty boy Stradwick, who's getting slightly less naughty, and highlights from a busy couple of weeks. Thank you. We'll see you Monday. Did you know scammers can literally steal your home right out from under you? The FBI calls it house stealing, and it's a growing real estate scam. Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee, and file it with your local recorder's office. So when was the last time you checked your home title? Probably never. And that's exactly what scammers are counting on. So let me tell you about Home Title Lock. Their $1 million triple lock protection keeps your home and equity safe. They can help you do this. Here's what you get: immediate 24/7 monitoring of your property, urgent alerts if there are any changes, and if fraud should happen, their U.S.-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix the fraud and restore your title at no additional cost. Get a free title history report so you can find out if you're already a victim, and access to your personal title expert, a $250 value just for signing up. Go to HometitleLock.com, use my promo code Megyn250, or click on the link in the description. And make sure to check out the $1 million triple lock protection details when you get there. HometitleLock.com, promo code Megyn250.